Hi, I'm Stu Davies, Ocean Caring Digital Strategist. This podcast dives into the real stories behind ocean caring brands and organisations. Welcome to A Drop in the Ocean. Each episode explores the wins, challenges and lived experiences of those working to protect our seas, from grassroots campaigners to global initiatives. But it's more than just those stories. We're also going to connect these changemakers with marketing, communications, AI, storytelling and strategy experts to share their insights and help us all amplify our missions. One drop in the ocean becomes many. Let's make some waves together. Welcome to A Drop in the Ocean, the podcast amplifying ocean caring voices. So I'm very, very excited about the guest I've got on my podcast. It's very close to my own heart. It is the brilliant Dani Jordan, who is the Director of Campaigns and Communities at Surfers Against Sewage, of which I've been a member and a volunteer for a long time. So Dani, welcome to the podcast. It's brilliant to have you on.
Thanks, Stu. You've been part of Surfers Against Sewage for longer than I have, so I think you definitely have the kind of expertise here. But thank you for having me on, and very honoured to be one of your first guests on your new podcast.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. So I always have a first question for all of my podcast guests. Could you share with me your fondest memory of the ocean, the thing that kind of resonates most?
Oh, there's lots, really. I think probably the ones that are coming through my mind at the top generally involve my children. So I've got sort of, they're 9 and 12 now. So, and it's usually around a sort of evening when you're getting one of those sort of really lovely summer days and you get to sort of stretch the day out on the beach and the sun's going down and just that pure pleasure of being next to the sea and just being able to really enjoy it, particularly in the UK in good weather. I think for me it's like family time. It's that kind of enjoying it together, the four of us, and just something about the end of the day, that sort of sundowner cocktail sort of hour anyway, that's something really magical about that.
It just paints a picture in my brain. The sunset scene, that's fantastic. So Dani, what I'd like to know is, before we start talking about your role and Surfers Against Sewage, is what's your personal connection to the ocean? What's brought you into what you're doing now? Yeah.
So, one of the things that is funny for me, particularly working at Surfers Against Sewage, and we've got this beautiful office, on a headland in Cornwall overlooking the most gorgeous cove, is that I live in Surrey. So I'm very much landlocked, and there's not many of us who are. But it doesn't mean the kind of lack of frequency for me. I don't get to be in the sea every day or even see it. Means I think that I have this kind of real appreciation. So whenever I arrive near the coast, all of us in the car, if the kids are there as well, will be like, hello, sea, as we arrive, that like real excitement to be there. And it's a real cliche because I see people say it all the time about it being like a kind of happy place. But it really is for me, and then that's come through for my family as well. And it can just be rock pooling or just sitting or just having a picnic. I love swimming, paddle boarding. I love water sports. So do my kids. So it's just something. And I think this really came into focus for me and for a lot of people, I think, over that lockdown period when we couldn't leave our local area. For me, that meant that I couldn't get to the coast. And I still remember the feeling of arriving at the coast the first time after lockdown, when it was still a bit like, you still feel a bit nervous about being out, but just that out breath of being by the sea and just, it's just something about it. It's really hard to sort of put into words, but I know so many people share that feeling. And I think in some ways I have the privilege of not seeing it all the time. So I really, really recognise it.
Yeah. If we do have any wordsmiths listening, I'd like to know, is there a word that bottles up the feeling of when you arrive at the sea, having not seen it for a long time? There's a word.
There must be. I'm sure there is.
So let's talk about, so what exactly is your role at Surfers Against Sewage? And maybe you can talk us a bit about the mission and the work of Surfers Against Sewage.
Sure. So my role oversees the sort of delivery side of Surfers Against Sewage. So it includes everything from our brilliant community programs. So we work with individuals and communities up and down the UK and sort of support them with tools and training and sort of connection to campaign on the various issues that we work on, which include sewage pollution, most famous for, but also plastic pollution. And we're starting to look more at chemical pollution in our ocean, in our seas, but also in our rivers as well. On the other side, we have a campaigns team, policy, and we've also got an app as well. So we're quite busy as a team in terms of the things that we're delivering. And Surfers Against Sewage, I sort of outlined our 3 areas there, but we had our 35th birthday bash not so long ago. We were there, and a beautiful headland again in Cornwall. So it's been around since 1990 and was started by a really small group of surfers who were literally fed up of surfing in sewage and decided to get together and do something about it. And they were really successful and had some really big wins in the early days, and which made a real change to the water quality, so how clean the water is around our coastlines all around the UK. And then, unfortunately, we find ourselves at a time when, particularly on the sewage issue, that kind of dropped away and has come back again as an issue. And we're still campaigning on the same issue that they were started on all those years ago.
Yeah, I think the waters are cleaner than back then in the 90s, but it feels like, we're having to be back there. Whereas the focus before was, as you said, that SAS was looking at plastic and starting to, look at climate change and chemicals. And we're back in the sewage room.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. As a campaigner, you want to be putting yourself out of work. You want the issue to be solved, and you want to be able to move on. And I mean, it's frustrating for me in the time that I've been working on sewage pollution, let alone for the people, who have been following this right from the beginning. So, I mean, it is scandalous. We all know that.
Yeah. I mean, we could blow the whole podcast just talking about the system, the broken system, but we're not. So, Dani, the last time I did actually see you, we were at the SAS ball in St Agnes, and I think we were sharing a pint of cider and laughing at a colleague dressed as a ridiculous cardboard box shark.
That was a great outfit.
But I know you personally, but I'd really like to share with our listeners, what drives you? What drives Dani personally and professionally?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I'm not someone, I meet people now who sort of knew what they wanted to do. From the off. They studied something at university, which was a passion of theirs, and they followed it on. And I was never that person. Don't know why. I think you're kind of lucky if you are. But I don't mind that. I always cared about nature. I've always loved nature, fascinated as a child. I think that's a story a lot of people can kind of recognise for themselves, but didn't really think much about it in terms of what that would mean for a career. Didn't make particularly great sort of informed choices in what I was going to study. It's difficult being a teenager. You don't really know what you want to do. And I just, but I sort of just did things I liked, which I don't think is a bad strategy in the end. I sort of picked things that I liked or I was good at, which led me to studying psychology at university. Because I'm really fascinated in people, really, and I always have been. It's never gone away. This fascination about why people do what they do, what makes people tick. And then, I mean, as we talk later about engagement and communication and campaigning, that all comes straight through to there. But it was while I was at university that I started to see that maybe I could apply that to kind of my love of nature and what was at that point a sort of emerging environmental issues. I mean, this was a little while ago now, and things have really kind of moved on since then. When we weren't really talking about climate very much back then, it was sort of more how can we ask people to recycle and those kind of issues. But yeah, so it was at that point. And then I think, so that's sort of the beginning of my career and how I ended up in this sort of work, but just driven by feeling that we can all feel helpless and overwhelmed by the injustice and the wrongs in the world. And, I feel like we can all make a change, and we can all do that in our own ways. And that's what drives me, I think, for myself. This is how I try to do something positive for the world, and I feel really strongly about that. But also to enable other people to see that they can do things as well. Even if it's something small, we can all do something, and really sort of unlocking people's power and kind of agency around that. I think that for me is really, it's exciting, and it's what keeps me going.
Yeah, that resonates so much with me. The the feeling of helplessness, of how big the problem is of climate change and ocean pollution. And I guess that's why I called the podcast A Drop in the Ocean, because it felt like we feel like drops in the ocean, but together, we can make some waves.
That's right.
That's one of my taglines I'm working with.
It's so true, though, isn't it? It's so true. Yeah. I mean, and the overwhelm is real. I mean, we've got kind of coming through of the Global Plastics Treaty, and alongside that, again, all that data again about how much plastic is going in to the ocean, just generally out into the environment. But we can't, all of us have our moments, and then we have to reset and sort of go again. Right, what can I do as an individual, as a group, as part of an organisation? And I think helping other people to feel that they have agency and power as well, for me, that really is definitely a motivation.
I mean, there was I went for a dip in Brighton Beach. I go most mornings, and so I went in yesterday, and it'd been a very hot evening, so when it's a very hot evening in Brighton Beach, unfortunately some parts of the beach there is a lot of litter waste, mainly from drinking alcohol, and there was a lot on there in the bit I was swimming. So, you come down, you're like, okay, it's like this every night. So I went for a swim, and I picked up all of the bits of litter I could kind of see around me. And then there was, what really lifted me, there was somebody else doing exactly the same thing. There was a girl, she was just on her way to work, and she was just walking along, and she just had a bag, and she had her headphones on, she was singing, and she was just picking up bits of litter, and she went, hello! And I felt better, I felt like together we can, that little part of the beach was a bit cleaner. Yeah. So...
It's so true, though, isn't it? It's like we're not on our own, and there's some really good stuff coming out at the moment around how many people want to see climate action, and just showing that actually the climate majority actually want us to take action and are willing and supportive of that. And I think it's that thing of knowing you're not on your own and it's not just you who's fed up.
Exactly. Listen to Dani, don't listen to the politicians or the tech bros. So Dani, What makes Dani Jordan's campaigns and approaches unique? How do you approach campaigning personally?
Oh, I mean, are they unique? I don't know. I feel like I have learned and grown through working with so many amazing people. So, it may be a unique combination of the things that I've kind of picked up and the people that I work with now as well. But along the way, I've worked with so many amazing sort of community organisers, communications experts, campaigners over the years. And I am a real magpie for, wow, that's amazing. That's how you went about that, or how you think about that, and sort of collecting all that up. And we should all be like that, right? We should all learn and as we go along. I think, I mean, I probably already kind of made the point. I think for me there's kind of a couple of things around campaigning. I mean, one is always your eye on the prize, right? I mean, it's a kind of real basics, but it's easy to get lost. There's so much going on all the time. There's so much noise. There's so much happening. There's so much purposeful distraction, and there's a lot of kind of just other stuff happening. So that kind of really trying to keep your eye really focused on what it is you're aiming for, what the impact is, and how you're going to get there. And then obviously that kind of, you're going to have setbacks. Campaigning's really hard. There's a side point here about building your own personal resilience and that kind of thing.
Right.
But when things go wrong or don't go your way, how you then reset, but keep your eye on that kind of end prize. So that how you sort of set up your strategies and your work. But again, people power for me is so, so critical. And one of the lovely things about working at Surfers Against Sewage is being able to bring that together. So we're able to go and speak to politicians and decision makers, but that's not because they think SAS is brilliant. That's because they know that SAS is backed by thousands of individuals and communities up and down the UK who are really mad and want to see action. So they don't open the door and say, please come and have a meeting because, Dani, I think you're an expert on sewage. They say, please come and talk to me because I'm terrified that my voters are actually really mad about this and they want to see action. And so I think that building public support, I mean, again, we can talk about the very amazing position we are in on sewage pollution and building, because I've worked on lots of issues, and it's very rarely like this in terms of the sort of cross-societal public support for a campaign. Everyone thinks it's scandalous, everyone knows about it, and everyone wants to see action on it. That's a really very, very unusual position to be in. But that local level campaigning, the communities we work with, the regional reps that we have, the people who are the community leads who are able to actually take the issue directly to decision makers at that sort of local level, and then for us to be able to scale that at a national level, that's where the real power of the campaigning at SAS kind of comes from. And it's one of those jobs. I mean, I've been in my role for 2 years now, and when I was applying for the job and going through the interview process, it was a real genuine, like, it's amazing what you have here. I cannot wait to be able to come in and sort of campaign with all of these amazing communities and supporters that we have, because it's, like I say, it's a bit of it's quite dreamy from a campaign perspective. So there's always more we can do.
I think it's a credit to you guys and the organisation for where it's got to. It got to this place where politicians are frightened of not engaging with Surfers Against Sewage because of the work of the generations since the 90s, and it's kind of building upon that. And it's a credit to everybody involved. And that's just been work, hasn't it? That's just been people out there doing work.
Yeah.
So this brings me to, what would you say that the biggest challenges that SAS face or you face in trying to build that momentum or create that change?
I mean, there's a longevity challenge. So these are long-standing issues. So if we just look at sewage, we take that as an example. We talked already about how this was an issue in the 90s. It's an issue again. It can be, in some ways, it's not complex at all, but it is easy to tie people up in sort of complex knots about it. It's not complex. Basically, no one's bothered to spend the money to make sure that we don't have sewage pouring into the places where we swim and surf and play. But others are able to tell a more complex story, which can, confuse that narrative slightly. I think one of the issues with sewage pollution is, even if we have what I would describe as a campaign win, which is, at the moment, we're campaigning for transformational reform of the water industry in England and Wales, we've recently had an independent water commission, which has been looking at the water companies and how they operate in England and Wales. And we're kind of, through the UK, things are organised in different places in different ways. They've just come out with their recommendations. We spent months campaigning around that to try and make those recommendations as good as possible, so that then when the government picks them up and goes forward to actually act on them, that they're doing something meaningful. Recommendations were quite disappointing, unfortunately. So, but we regroup and we carry on, because now it's time to government. Sir John Cunliffe, who ran that commission, is not as influenced by the public as the government are, and that's where our role is, to make sure that we're really bringing through those messages from communities and individuals. We ran hustings ahead of the general election last year, and people were elected on promises to clean up, particularly in coastal towns, to really do something about this. And, that's not going to be forgotten. But the challenge is, even if the government this year, next year, say, we're going to sort this out, we're going to do the transformational reform of the water industry, it's going to take a number of years for us to see the end of sewage pollution. And during that time, you can't take your eye off the ball, because, you have to keep up the pressure to make sure we're travelling towards the end. So there's a longevity think that answer was quite long. There's a longevity
No,
issue
it's great.
about how you keep up interest and pressure on an issue when it's A, is going over a really long time, but B, in my most optimistic world, when you're starting to really win on it, but you need to make sure you're getting it over the line. Okay. I think it's one of the things. How do you keep talking about sewage pollution in a way that feels fresh and interesting and not just overwhelming and exhausting? Is something that we're always sort of thinking about and talking about when we're developing sort of the next phase of a campaign or a sort of communication strategy.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. Well, we're going to take a very short break, but in the next section, we are going to deep dive into some of those campaign tactics. So we'll see you in a little bit. You're listening to A Drop in the Ocean, the podcast that brings together ocean changemakers and digital communications experts, helping us all amplify our impact. If you've got a story to tell, or you're a digital communications expert who loves the ocean, then I would love to hear from you all. Get in touch with me on stu-davies.com. Let's all amplify our impact. And welcome back to Drop in the Ocean. I've got my brilliant guest here, Dani Jordan, the Director of Campaigns and Communities at Surfers Against Sewage. So this section, we're going to drop into communications and campaigns, just giving some advice on some of the things that you can maybe share with the audience to help our sector do their jobs better. So my first question for you, Dani, is how do you approach campaigning and community building? What advice can you give to anybody out there who might be struggling in their jobs?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, Stu, but I suppose if I pick off two, which is audience and topic, so two big ones there. But just a headline, I think audience, and maybe we can throw in a bit of testing as well, but audience, who are you speaking to? It's so easy to assume you know who you're speaking to. And actually, when you're campaigning, you need to think about this really quite carefully in terms of actually who do you need to speak to? The people that you are speaking to for your campaign. So, for example, at Surfers Against Sewage, we've got really pretty successful social media channels. And a lot of our external communication will be via our social media channels or via an email list. The people who are on those social media channels and on that email list are obviously already engaged in our calls in one way or another. And we can assume that we know them and know what they're like and what makes them tick. But all of us are multifaceted beings and we're all interested in a lot of different things and they come up and down at different priorities at different times. And also, I mean, this is why I did psychology, right? People are fascinating. Things that they think and do and feel astonishingly surprising always. Never ever assume you know what's going on with your audience, I think would probably be my first point. My previous role at WWF, when I sort of finished up there, was leading on campaign insights. So I had the pleasure of being able to run sort of research and testing ahead of big campaigns to really understand actually what audience were we reaching, if we weren't reaching the audience that we felt that we needed to reach. And in that case, that was about who was influential on the politicians that we needed to make decisions. So you start getting into a sort of campaign theory of change then. How could we reach them? Understanding what channels they use, what radio stations they listen to, where do they get their news? Is it online? Is it via different social media? All of you, so you can get right into who you're reaching and how to reach the right people. So that would be number one for me. Topic. So when I first started working on sewage pollution some time ago and long before it had this kind of widespread sort of public understanding, if you started talking about sewage, people would be like, ooh, like it was almost like, what is that? That's not something we talk about. It's something we flush down the toilet and it goes away and it's dealt with. So there was a little bit of a ickiness around it. I think the icky element of sewage pollution actually really helps in our campaigning because there's a natural disgust about sewage, which helps to then sort of build into that sort of outrage in places where we think nature should be thriving and we should be able to use the water safely. But different topics are more or less difficult to communicate around and to effectively engage people on. one of the things about water quality, so how clean our waters is, that is very helpful, is that often it's felt quite locally. So, I mean, we touched on the fact earlier about sort of plastic pollution in the ocean. That's actually quite difficult and feels quite far away and massive and overwhelming. Whereas your local beach, you're talking about the sort of state of your local beach, or for people with their local river, and the places that they go to regularly. It's really local. And so that's a real kind of strength, or a sort of lever that we can really draw on in terms of the topic. I've worked before on the climate crisis, very different situation, and you have to think differently about how you're talking about it, how you're bringing that home for people. And then I think the difference between those two examples as well is, as I touched on earlier, sewage has got that sort of cross-societal buy-in that it's an issue and that we need to deal with it. Sort of what level of effort, or I guess finance, we're willing to put in it might differ. Climate has now kind of come into a bit more of a divided situation. So topic, and then testing would be my final one, which is that if you are particularly mostly communicating via digital channels, whether that be social or email, then you have this lovely opportunity to actually work out what works best. And that can be love images, Stu. Like, so yes, your words matter, but images really matter as well. And again, we all fall into the trap of thinking we know what the answer is. And I'm so often surprised by what's worked well, or, you know, what's worked more or less well, kind of what's captured people's imagination to get them to click through, to email their MP, to, you know, obviously we're a charity, fundraising is really important for us as well. So all of that, for me, they're kind of some of the fundamentals that then you have to start building and layering your sort of more nuanced campaigning on top of.
Yeah, I think that's such wise advice. I think, you know, especially in today's digital world where there's so many different channels and we can get so lost, just having the fundamental building blocks, audience, topic. And also an important part of marketing, digital marketing campaigning is, you know, it's a hypothesis, and, you know, experiment, fail, and then optimize or make something better. And it's those principles and tenets that you build on each other, and you can build on success.
I think one thing I would add as well, and something we're sort of really busy sort of building at the moment, is our new EDI strategy. So equity, diversity and inclusion. So we have an EDI manager and we've done lots of work on this, but we're really refreshing that and sort of really building on that. And one of the sort of pillars of our work around that is that by having a more diverse workforce, different views, different opinions, different experiences, we can communicate better, we can design better, we can come up with campaigns better. And that's the other thing I would add, is that I'll never forget years ago being in a meeting with, I used to do quite a lot of work with water companies, being in a meeting with a water company, and the man saying to me, now this was pre-COVID, why would you put that question in that survey? Because who swims in rivers? And because his life experience at the time meant that wasn't so, you know, and so, you know, and he hadn't obviously had any experience of the fact that was quite normal for some people.
Wow.
And it's just a really simple example of how you need people with different experiences and perspectives in your team to actually really communicate and campaign effectively as well. And so, yeah, that's, as an organisation, that's something that we kind of really focusing on over the coming years.
Yeah, brilliant. What was the man's name? We can maybe get our audience to write into him and explain their point of view. No, don't. get bombed. No, it's fine.
I really don't. It was at Thames Water, though. I do remember
Let him know, people. Let him know. And no, that's interesting on diversity. I do remember attending a diversity workshop as part of my reps training with Surfers Against Sewage. And I remember, you know, a very honest appraisal of, you know, what is the demographic of the people who come to your beach cleans? Is there a certain demographic? And I was like, actually, yes, we're potentially not represented by some of the minority groups in the city. And my question to that person, you know, what tactics would you have to help engage her? And she gave a brilliant answer, which was just, well, you go to them, of course. Yeah,
well, it's the same as everything. It's about meeting people where they are, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, which same as you would for your kind of comms campaign. But it's something that I think, you know, as an organisation, we know we could definitely do better on, and we want to, and we're definitely really driven to. And, you know, we know that the people that we work with and the reps as well are too. So it's great chance to ask some of the difficult questions and to not feel silly when you're asking them, because that's what it takes to actually make a change.
Yeah, it does. It does. What do you think has been the most effective tools that you guys have used to engage supporters or sparking action?
Ooh, that is a good question. So, engaging supporters, I think that the last few years we have run paddle out protests. So this is where people come out. A lot of them are on the coast. So we had, I think, 33 or 35 paddle out protests this May just gone this year, all around the coast of the UK, and then in some inland spots as well, on rivers and lakes too. And basically people come out on their surfboards, their paddle boards, they swim, they kayak to protest against the state of their waters and for the need for change, basically. So transformational change to the water industry in England and Wales, that's our main ask in those places. That action this year for me, really, so we've done it for a few years in a row. Now, it's really interesting, the campaign, because half of you is thinking we need to freshen up. We need to think about, we can't just keep doing the same thing every year because, you know, it starts to lose its impact. But the other side is that because we've done it for a few years, I think communities understood what it was. People who maybe have never been to a protest or that doesn't feel like something they would do, they'd been able to see what it was and felt confident to actually join in or even run one themselves in the way that felt right for them. And that they have become this like amazing moment of community connection as well. So where people are able to come together around their shared anger, hope for the future, all of those things, and kind of so it's a really interesting one, because I think it's, like I say, lots of people have never been to any sort of protest or march. That's not something they've ever thought they would do. And, you know, with the kind of current environment around space and feeling safe to actually have free speech and protest. And I've had people express that to me as well at the paddle out last year. So I was in Brighton, where you asked you, running a super paddle out.
Thank you.
One of sort of friend of a friend came. She's a lawyer, and she said to me, "I don't think I would feel safe at a protest in London in terms of being arrested, but this feels okay. This feels like somewhere I can sort of express myself, my feelings about this, and kind of on the right side of the law." So, I mean, I digress on that point, but being part of those days is always amazing, and you come away exhausted and buzzing from the whole experience. And I think coming together like that, it's like you described a sort of mini version of two people who are, you know, coincidentally litter picking on the beach. It's like a mega version of that, where you all find your people, basically, and sort of have that shared voice. So for me, that's probably one of the really great things we're doing. But I also think highlights one of the challenges about kind of community building, movement building and campaigning, and how you keep both of those sides. And it's all one, but also how you keep it kind of fresh and impactful as you're going along.
Yeah, I help organise the one in Brighton, and it doesn't feel like a protest, although it is, but it's very family friendly. You know, we have a band, we had a drag queen compare.
We did.
But also talking about the serious issues. So if anyone is listening and you haven't been to a paddle out protest, they're all over the country.
Yes.
Come down to Brighton. That's going to be the biggest one again. So
the one that we both go to.
I'm a bit biased, no, but it's all brilliant, and there's a lot of really good energy. And the way we get, and it's something very powerful when actually everyone does get out in the water. Is that moment where we're all in a circle.
Yeah.
It's something quite ethereal about it all. We're all in there, we're in our space, and it's brilliant. But campaigning isn't always easy, is it, Dani? So
no.
What would you say that the hardest or the most frustrating thing, or the messiest thing that, you know, of campaigning that people have to deal with, or the challenges in there?
I mean, I think I touched on it earlier about personal resilience, and this is something that you, as a campaigner, so important because these campaigns are a long game and there are setbacks and it is hard. And there are lots of vested interests always trying to push for the opposite direction. And what I mean by personal resilience as well isn't about being big and tough and just sucking it up. It's about making sure you're taking breaks, that you are recuperating, that you are looking after your well-being, that that you've got a brilliant team around you as well. So, the kind of ebb and flow of the work can move between the team because there is no quiet time of the year. That's, campaign's tough. Everyone knows that. That part about how you look after yourself and your team, I think, is really critical. And it's not always easy to get right as well, because when you're working with people who are really passionate and you really care, actually, you're almost having to force people to take time off sometimes as well, because they just, it's so important to them to do the next thing or to take the next opportunity or to not miss this moment. But there will always be another moment. I think to me, that's probably the hardest thing. And I think that will resonate for anyone who campaigns on any issue, is how you keep up your own momentum on something.
Yeah, I think that's such wise counsel. Burnout, anyone campaigning, especially in the environmental sector. So I just wanted to kind of finalize, just talk about digital and how we use digital. Has it been a useful tool for you to be able to amplify your campaigns? Or does it feel like something like a train that's just speeding along? Especially things like AI and these things that we're just trying to grab hold of and work out how to use. What's your experience?
Yeah, so digital is at the heart of everything that we do. You can't get away from it. So even though I've talked a lot about the communities we work with around the UK, we still communicate, with communities via digital means. It's our main tool in terms of engaging people, building our supporter base and kind of maintaining and growing that supporter base. So it can't be kind of put aside. I think we've done a really interesting project recently around a bit of a health check around how we're using digital internally. And that's sort of thrown out a bit of a roadmap for Surfers Against Sewage for how we work within Surfers Against Sewage. At the heart of it for me is how we make sure that we are engaging our different supporter base. We've got supporters in lots of different ways as an organisation, whether that be businesses, individuals, community leads, all sorts of different touch points. So how we actually make sure that makes sense and we're not losing people through the cracks, how we make sure that we're providing people with the right sort of engagements. They want to stay with us, kind of stay on that journey with us. As an organisation, that in a year's time they'll still want to take a campaign action, because we use digital campaign actions as well. So contact your MP actions, petitions, hand raisers, all of those kind of things are really important tools in our sort of wider armour of campaigning. And then there's some really interesting stuff as well. So some newer things coming through. They might not be new to other people, newer to Surfers Against Sewage. So, for example, there are community organising tools that local community leads, that we are, if we kind of go down that route, we're able to put sort of more digital tools into the hands of kind of local community leads so that they can run petitions in their area or, different kind of tools to organise action and campaigning where they are. Because we've got a bit of a gap there at the moment. We're able to do this sort of national part, but then there's a bit of a gap about how to support people, and local campaigning is so important to us. So there's some process stuff about how we're more streamlined, but I think we've got headroom in terms of how we use digital tools and how we ensure that we're engaging effectively, which I find really exciting. On AI, it's really interesting. I'd say I am in the wrong age bracket, so I'm having to work hard to keep up with AI developments, and I will, because you can't get left behind. It's interesting in terms of how we're working internally. I know lots of the team use AI in their everyday work, but one of the things we've found with comms is that we've had really strong. I think we put out one post once with an AI generated image,
Okay.
and the pushback was so strong that we will not be doing that again. Actually, our own guidelines about how we use imagery, it doesn't really fit, 'cause it's always about authentic imagery, all of those kind of things. So actually an AI generated image. But
I mean, my view on it, Dani, is, whenever you ask the AIs, just say please, because when Skynet takes over, they might give you a sweeping job. Well, look, Dani, it's been really, really wonderful having you on. But before we go, I just want to make sure that if anyone's listening not heard of Surfers Against Sewage before, how can they find you? What's the best way?
Yeah, thanks, Stu. So, I mean, obviously, you've got website sas.org.uk. We're on all the socials as well. I'd also put a plug in for our Safer Seas and River Service app. So this is an app that you can download on your phone, and if you are going swimming or surfing or paddling and you want to check whether there's been any recent sewage pollution, that will let you know. You can set up alerts. It is the best available data out there for that. So I definitely recommend people download the app.
I can vouch for that. I use it myself. Okay, Dani, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stu.
Thanks for listening to A Drop in the Ocean, the podcast that brings together ocean changemakers and digital communications experts, helping us all amplify our impact. New episodes will be available from your streaming platform of choice. Please do like, comment and share and help us spread the message. See you next time.